Thanks, Nancy. Is this working? Am I good? So, thank you very much for coming, even on a rainy evening. AOA 25, name of the book, marks the 25th anniversary of Acton Ostry Architects, the practice. I'm here. Yeah. Is this just proximity here?
Yeah, well, we are pretty close, and what we thought we would do tonight is, well, I guess some sort of version of an architectural fireside chat. Just going to take you through a selection of a few of the projects from the book. It's an opportunity to tell some of the stories that are kind of behind the scenes, some information that's not in the book, share that with you. And we also just wanted to tell you guys, just to maybe encourage a sale or two, is that the proceeds for the book are going to go to the support of young architects. None of it's going back to us or anything like that. We just thought it would be great to support that endeavor.
So the book is a chronology of 25 projects that have special significance to us that we've done over the past 25 years. And as Russell mentioned, we've got some excerpts to show you and hopefully entice you to buy the book. So the featured projects are illustrated with photos, drawings, models and texts that were all produced at the time that the designs were done. And the intent is to demonstrate the evolutionary process as well as the consistent nature of the work as it's evolved over the 25 years.
It's really kind of marking for us a new transition as we're growing the firm, looking to give some opportunities for the people who we've collaborated with over the years in the office, and to give them the opportunity to assume a leadership role and start to lead the design direction. And our kind of thinking on it was that the book would help to be, help to assist to guide with some of the design principles and demonstrate the approaches, kind of a bit of a record about how Mark and I have learned to design together, I guess we're gonna say. And I think that's something else about the book here is like we'll be talking about projects sometimes independently. At the end of the day, there's usually a managing principal that's more managing the project, but we're very much collaborating on the design along with our staff throughout the process. What do you want to start? A bit of background about the firm. So we were established way back in 1992 as the Acton Ostry. Just three of us at the time, three principals, and here we are in 1996. Part of a feature in the Vancouver Courier, and that's our employee number one. So yes, we do hire women architects there. We just really, really loved that picture, a bit of a boy band feel. We were in a bunker of a fire hall that was underneath the First Street off-ramp of the Granville Street Bridge. Mice running around every now and then in the nooks and crannies.
The title says it all. Recent grads live precarious existence. The Courier did a feature at that time. I think there were probably about a dozen young architects who were recognized and featured in it, and everybody was living this kind of precarious existence. And there were a lot of questions asked in the article. Would any of these practices survive? And here we are, 25 years later. We survived, as we were planning our celebration of our 25th anniversary, we were working with a media consultant, and the topic came up about publications, And as we were scrolling through them, we thought, wouldn't it be great if the Courier came back and did a 25-year follow-up, which they did.
Yeah, that was they said, if you could be in any, any newspaper across the country or any magazine or whatever, what would be your first choice? And we said the Vancouver Courier, because we just, we like the synchronicity here. And this is a picture that was taken on top of the Duke, one of our projects, actually the last project in the book. And so rooftop to rooftop over the years. And another one of our projects in the background there, the Independent.
Just gonna go back a little step. In around 2002, Acton Ostry Architects was formed, and so that was about 10 years after the original practice started. We'd been working on small-scale institutional projects, artist live art studio projects, no single-family dwellings. So we were establishing ourselves as working on primarily institutional projects, which was really challenging at the time, and which is why that original article talked about that precarious existence.
Yeah, no, that's right. That was one of our strategies too. I don't know if it was a smart strategy at the time, was that we wouldn't do single-family residential housing because we didn't want to get kind of slotted and typecast into that. That kind of narrow kind of focus. Once you get kind of renowned for that, we knew some architects that had been quite established over the years, and they just hadn't been able to break out of that particular thing. So we kind of starved for the first 10 years or so, and then actually now I'm remembering, then we had that big epiphany at 10 years where we thought we just really loved architecture. We just sort of like worked 12 hours a day and going on weekends just because it was fun for us. And after about 10 years, we kind of sort of woke up one day and thought, well, maybe we could make a business out of this and actually try to make money. And we came up with this 5-year plan. Shows you how much business savvy that architects have. We decided our 5-year plan was, let's move to a bigger space, hire more people, and then surely we'll get larger, bigger, better projects. And somehow or other, within 3 years, the 5-year plan came to fruition, and we're in a large office with 30 staff and
working on larger scale projects.
Yeah,
just like the plan was.
And then so there we were, really, really on our way. And this is our really first project that we kind of promoted as for the firm over the years. It actually started, as you were saying, Acton Ostry. That would be Greg Johnson. I'd met Greg when I was working with Peter Cardew as I was going through the registration process, and Greg and I established a little joint venture between we had independent firms in name, and we were able to get on a short list for architects for a selection process for a First Nation school up in Haida Gwaii. And so we did a proposal, and we were moved on to the next stage in the selection process, which was an interview, and that was all great and fine. We were really excited about it, but the only problem was that we didn't have an office, so we had to kind of make one up, and we did a pop-up, well, let's just call it like it's just a fake office. We had friends come in and act as staff. We rented furniture. My wife, Jillian, here, was sitting down in the front row. We just kind of started dating a couple of years at that time, and she came in and acted as our receptionist. We had to get a phone installed. Our friend Gregory Henriquez, he was in on the scam. He would call every 15, 20 minutes to say hi to Jillian. So he looked like it was a busy operation. They came in, we went through the interview. I don't know if they let on that they recognized it or not, but later on they left. We waited about an hour, started packing up everything, sending it back to the rental places, and then received a call, I think about 5 p.m. that night, saying that we'd been selected for the project. And so And then at that time, I'd suggested to Greg, hey, I knew this guy, Mark Ostry. Why don't we all get together and start a practice? And so that was really the genesis of it all. Back then, too, in terms of just a little bit about design process, is we were really young designer, so very much influenced by our architectural education, which at that time was very much about narrative and allegorical representation. This school, very, very small school, I think it's a 4-classroom school up in Haida Gwaii. The band, they wanted it to evoke the presence of a longhouse, but of course it's stick frame construction, and we needed to find a way to reinterpret that idea of massive cedar structures. You can see it here represented here with in place of these massive cedar structures, a massive concrete column and a massive steel beam, kind of showing the muscular nature of that architecture, and then just push-pull on the facade of this longhouse style facade to provide that reference. Here you can see just how small and tiny that school was in the plan, and also First Nations architecture, very frontal in nature. So I had a language resource center that was situated at the center of the school, and it was accessed by a series of descending ramps. Every wing of the school is on a different elevation. And so what happens at this sacred central place, which was really at the cross axes of these axes of supernatural power for the understanding of the Haida cosmos, that's where we placed the Language Resource Center, and that's the place where the elders would teach the children the language, and also dances and songs to keep the culture going.
Project number 2. We found early on that young firms always need a break to get these kind of projects. It's pretty hard to start out a practice and then suddenly be working on these institutional projects. And our second project was Harel Synagogue, which is on the North Shore, right at the intersection of Taylor Way and the Upper Levels Highway. And the break we got to get this job was a member of the building committee contacted Richard Henriquez to see if he was available, and he wasn't. And Gregory was in the back. He overheard the conversation, and he told his dad, "Hey, you should tell them that Mark and Russell might be interested in the project." So we got that referral, and one thing led to another, and
I was going to say, I should add for everybody here, because we've already mentioned Gregory a number of times, but I met Gregory on the first day of architecture school at Carleton University, and Mark, you grew up in the same neighborhood. I can't remember what age you met him.
6 years of age.
Yeah.
So family friends. So that was a lucky break. This project was done in 1998, completed in 1998. And since then, we've been called back on numerous occasions to do small and larger scale additions. Originally, there was a terrace that basically overlooked the site. There's a beautiful creek that bisects it. And 16 years after we did this, we were called back to see if it was okay to put a social lounge in that space. They actually wanted us to determine if we thought it was okay. They call us when they want to hang art up in the synagogue to make sure that it's actually being done in accordance with the sort of design principles, which is great. It's very endearing in a way.
That doesn't happen on every project.
Definitely not. This project was a very prescient project. I remember when we were working on it, the rabbi said, when you're finished this project, you're going to be designing churches and synagogues. And sure enough, we've gone on to design a number of them. And I didn't understand it at the time, but it's a building type that not a lot of architects have experience with. But thanks, Russell. He'll just keep me moving along so I don't ramble too long. But in the vein that Russell had mentioned about the education that we had in the 80s, we knew that the tool we had to start the design process was coming up with an architectural idea that could be carried through the process. And on the left of this slide is an ideogram that illustrates the historical references that we use that were depicted from the ancient Temple of Jerusalem. And these historical markers were used to form the basis of the design. And that includes a processional footbridge that you can see at the top, and a number of very heavy masonry and concrete elements referencing the original temple. And on the right, one of those elements was this massive concrete rainwater sluice that houses the sacred ark on the inside of the sanctuary. So, thanks. It's a very, very simple program of just worship, congregation, and education. And what connected and linked all of the program essentially were these historical markers. The synagogue only had access across a salmon spawning creek, which is originally, in the original design, there was just a single footbridge. In the middle of construction, there was somebody from Los Angeles was on his way up to Whistler and saw the construction. And he was curious, and he went inside, and when he found out what was happening, he actually, right on the spot, he wrote a check, a donation to the synagogue, to see that the classroom bridge could be constructed at the same phase. It's just very remarkable. It's one of these build it and they will come kind of moments. And the other thing is the shape of the plan is essentially using the building as a buffer from Taylor Way and the upper levels highway, which are very, very noisy. When you're inside the site on this side from the photograph, it's a very tranquil, natural setting. And this is just an image of the daylight-filled sanctuary. There were high clear-story windows and skylights to enable the tradition of being able to read prayer books with natural daylight. And in the center is the Jerusalem stone-clad ark that houses the Holy Scriptures, and it's recessed into the concrete rainwater sluice that you saw from the other image. And 12 years after the project was built, we called back to see about doing some improvements in the sanctuary, which included these variegated acoustic wood panels that were, like I say, added 12 years after we started. Just another one of those additions.
Yeah, and I remember way back when we also got to design all the lighting. Right?
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. This is Stella. It's our first multi-family mixed-use residential project. We'd only worked on artist liftwork studios in the past. I don't really think new builds, eh? They were
Conversions of
conversions
old warehouses.
Of warehouses. So Mark and I were chatting, trying to remember how this job even walked in the door, and we actually can't really remember it.
Well,
have you remembered?
Yeah, we used to, because of the artist liftwork studios we're doing, and there might be a planner or two in the audience. But we'd often find that we'd get potential clients calling us saying, "Oh, I was speaking to someone at the city and they said we should give you a call." I'm sure they were giving lots of architects' names, but I know that we were being referred to by the planning department.
Yeah, so this is in Mount Pleasant at 12th and Kingsway, and is a very, very interesting project for us because it's had such a convergence of traffic, and we had to come up with a design strategy where we decided to do this low-slung podium and push this slab-formed tower way to the back of the site to get the people away from this busy corner, and then also to make sure that the structure wasn't going through this auto dealership showroom. And that was really, really important because that was actually the client. The client that owned the site was the auto dealer. And so, of course, their number one priority was that dealership. And I got to say, this project, it was just a real eye-opener for us in the office. So there we are. This was probably within the first year or two of that magic 5-year/3-year plan, where we had all of these new faces working with us. It was a very, very collaborative design process. But it also showed us that we had grown so fast that we had to kind of take some time to figure out how to manage all these people, I guess, and to put the right systems into place for an office of this size. Because Mark and I, again, through our internship, we'd always, coming up through the ranks, had been really kind of very small, modest size offices. So really learning on the go. Here you can see that slab form pushed back there. And I remember there's lots of fantastic contributing ideas from different people in the office. Someone had this idea about flipping the floor plan so that we get these double height staggered balconies, and then this series of town houses that are sliding along that white band. It's providing, again, another kind of acoustical buffer similar to Harrell, and then this very jaunty prow right at the intersection to really, really highlight that they're selling Honda vehicles in there. Another thing about this project too is we were doing a quick precedent study at that time, and we couldn't find any examples in North America of housing above auto dealership, which had a service center in it. So there's really a big separation of, was it light industrial use, F2, not to get too code specific in here. But here's a view down. You can see the orange cat looking down on the terrace down below. You can see the townhouses, and this is a real oasis at that very, very busy corner.
So we had to include a cactus club, and the story of us working with the cactus restaurants goes way back to the beginning when we really needed a job. And we got this call from one of the owners. They were younger than us at the time, and still are. We drove out to Surrey on some highway, King George Highway, and met the owners, Scotty and Richard, in one of their restaurants. And since then, we've done about 25 of their projects. And it's been in itself a real evolution of design, going back to the first meeting we had with them and seeing wagon wheels and tractors and stuffed animals and neon all over the restaurants, and then basically, that's led to this.
Yeah, it was a real evolution and growth over the years. As well, I mean, I have to say, as we're bringing them forward in the in the design sensibility, and I got to say, they've been a great success in the city here, and moving across the country. Testament to them too, that they were looking to grow their brand and their food and wine offerings and everything. So it was just kind of like a symbiotic kind of whole evolution.
Yeah, it was an education for both of us. I think we fired them twice, and they might have fired us once. But anyway, it was over 20 years of working closely with them. And next. Yeah, so this is the Cactus Club on English Bay. And this one is all about views of people, views of water, and views of sunsets. And here you can see the use of triple glazed low iron glass so that we got the clearest view on the street right through the restaurant. You can see the horizon, and as you get a little closer, you can see ships right through there. It's absolutely crystal clear. The design is a direct response to site constraints. This is one of the most heavily constrained sites we've ever worked with. On the east, you can see the pedestrian and bike paths and the street. On the west, we had the seawall and beach. On the south, we had the historic bathhouse, and on the north, we had mature landscape in the park. But that wasn't the end of it. Below us, we had a 200-year floodplain that we had to stay above, and we also had a height restriction where we couldn't exceed the height of the original fabric concession stand that used to be on the site. So we were really pushed in every direction, or compressed in every direction. The kitchen and washrooms to the restaurant are actually built under the sidewalk. That's how tight and limited this space was.
Yeah, it looks like a submarine. I remember when we were going for the approvals on this too, is the city was interested in making this project happen, and but there was some public outcry against it. I remember when we met with Ralph Siegel, and he said he asked us to do a drawing, kind of like an elevation from where English Base started to where it ended, because that was the site, so that we would show there's the restaurant on that length of property, just as a way of saying, well, look, we're not really using too much of that frontage.
Yeah, a little interesting anecdote. There was a woman who lives nearby who was dead set against having any kind of commercialism in public space, public parks. And she fought this tooth and nail, wrote letters to council, wrote letters to the park board, did everything she could to try to stop this from happening. And she wasn't successful. But a couple of years after it opened, she said, we heard that her grandkids were coming to Vancouver and they wanted to go to this Cactus Club. She had to go. And she went, and she couldn't believe the place. She went home and she wrote a 2-page letter to Richard and Scotty, the owners of Cactus Club, explaining how she felt about this project before it happened and how going there completely changed her perspective and outlook. And now she just loves the place. So
maybe that was after half a dozen Bellinis, yeah, too. I don't know.
Architecture can change you. Anyway, the building is nestled into the foreshore escarpment, and I mentioned the kitchen and bathrooms are beneath the sidewalk. The design is really this place that mediates between the city and the waterfront with terracing patios. And I know I've already said it, but it's all about the views, watching people, watching sunsets.
Sauder School of Business. Wow, this was a project. It's the project that keeps on giving, I guess. Even though it kind of arrives late in the book, it's because we started, I don't know how many years ago, Mark, like over 10? I don't know, and it's been 10 years, 7 or 8 phases. We can't even remember how many phases anymore. But wow, what an opportunity. It started as them coming to us. I don't even know what the connection was that we wound up doing a renovation of a tiered classroom.
Yeah, they needed a classroom to be renovated. That was it. That was our project.
Yeah. So this turned into a totally new scale of work from that tiered classroom, but somehow then they entrusted us with their school, and it turned into a renewal of 250,000 square feet of their existing space and a 50,000 square foot classroom block addition and a addition of a conference center on the penthouse of the Henry Angus Tower. I guess just really, really incredible that that we were offered that opportunity, and of course we've did our utmost to deliver on that. And one of the real key ideas on this project was that you can see the new classroom block on the right, and the old classroom block on the left. And the idea was to come up with this 5-story central atrium, really soaring skylit space that was a place to kind of fuse and become the new heart of the school. Their old school is very, very disparate assemblage of, I'm going to say, some not sensitively done additions over the years. And I remember talking to the Sauder people, is they would have strategic meetings about which door to bring potential donors and speakers in, because they were not very proud of their facility. And one of the things was they wanted, as I said, a bold new identity for the project. And I remember it was you were talking about what would be the approach on this, and then, you know, what should this look like? How are we going to give them this new look? And then Mark, I remember you telling me, it was like, I think the building looks like a barcode, right? And I remember going, what are you talking about?
I think what, we were having a lunch and learn, and I was really bored, and I was just sketching over and over and over the facade, and that's when the idea of the barcode came.
Yeah, and then so it's kind of like this idea of using this pattern language of digital commerce to express a facade for this. So that barcode in black up above, that's actually Sauder School of Business spelt out in whatever barcode language. And then down below is like we colorized it with colored glass and stained plywood that were on the old concrete precast fins. And then, of course, we kind of jumbled it up and smushed it up for architectural reasons, kind of another level of abstraction, and got them that new identity. And I think it's certainly served them well over the years, as they've been, I think, a couple of times now, #1 business school in the country. And I got to say, it's like, yes, they always knew they were a fantastic business school, but their facility never really reflected what they offered. And now it's, again, been one of those symbiotic things, is that after they add the better facilities, it attracts you know, faculty and students, and in turn, we get to come back for addition after addition after addition. Another big aspect and consideration of the project was, unlike most projects out at UBC, where different faculties are really looking for the university to provide most of the funding for them, they went out and they sourced the majority of it on their own. So donor recognition was this big consideration. I remember kind of groaning about that at the beginning. It's like plaques on walls and stuff like this. We thought we've got to come up with a different idea. And we came up with this idea of embedding the faces of the donors right inside these huge glazed planes that we had throughout the building. And we would take these photographs and then kind of came up with a program where we would substitute you know, pixels that were derived from international currency symbols. So it's kind of like the money making up the person who's donating the money. You know, there's something circular and, again, sort of symbiotic about that. And then, wow, I think we did this one in 2017. This is the Henry Angus Tower. It's the where the faculty offices are and the administration for the building. And of course, after we completed doing kind of a cosmetic renovation inside this tower, is a few years later, then they got the funding to do the seismic upgrade. So we had to move everybody out just after the building had been kind of refreshed, and then seismically upgrade it. And one of the strategies was we came up with this idea of this 4-story kind of flying seismic buttress that also marked the entry into this into the Henry Angus Tower. And I gotta say, it's like, now we're looking at another expansion for them currently.
This is the another UBC project. We've actually done quite a few projects out at UBC. This is the new aquatic center that was completed about 2 years ago in 2017. And this was our first joint venture project. This wasn't a building type that we had experience with. Wouldn't have been a project that we would be interested in pursuing, especially when Vancouver has an architectural firm who specializes in this and has probably done every pool in the Lower Mainland, except this one. We took a phone call from MJMA, they're architects out in Toronto. They specialize in pool design. We've always admired their work, and they've always admired our work. There's a lot of mutual respect. And we decided to do this for the experience of working with another firm and working on a project or a building type that we had no experience with. It turned out to be a great collaboration. We're very good friends with them to date. We're always talking about future opportunities of collaboration. So it was a huge success. The project had a very, very simple program and an extremely modest budget, a very, very tight budget. The challenge beyond the budget was really finding a way to combine recreation facilities with high-performance competition facilities. UBC gets to boast producing more Olympic swimmers than any other university in the country. And so there's a lot of training that goes on at UBC for their Olympians and for their national team. So this is a very, very important pool for the country. And the way we achieved this separation was with a continuous skylight and screen. You can see it on the left. That really delineates between the two pool halls, the recreation side and the competition side. And it's a very, very simple project that there are three really distinct elements architecturally. There's a canted black concrete base. You can sort of see it in the background, sloping up to the left to the bleachers, which grounds the building. And it's separated from a tessellated metal roof with continuous glazing on three sides and a clear story on the fourth side. So it's a very, very transparent facility, and you'll see that the roof actually, and this was to meet the budget, the roof rises and falls according to the functional requirements below. So it's high above the 3-meter diving board, and it's just drops to get low everywhere else. It's that simple. Uh-oh.
Yeah, no, I remember the concept, the tagline for the concept was box with a slot.
Box with a slot. Thanks, Michael. Full screen. Great.
Great.
Thanks. So there's a couple more slides. How do we get a view full screen so we can tab? We're in the search thing. Might need your help again. Hit escape.
It takes time to think.
So I don't think we're in the full screen. You can see the bar at the top. Cool. Okay. Technology is not perfect. Okay. Yeah. So let me give it a hit. Not moving?
Might need to think. Could try it. Maybe it's that one.
Not moving. Oh. It's thinking. Sorry, everyone. That might be it. We have a couple more projects we want to show you before we wind it up. There you go. It's not responding. I don't know if everyone or anyone here is familiar with the aquatic center that this one replaced. It was built in the 70s, and it was dark, very few, if any, windows. I don't even know if there were any windows in it. So there were some skylights, but this project came along in stark contrast to the aquatic center that it replaced. It was bright, open, airy, and we've got some very sophisticated ventilation system that essentially makes it a beautiful place to breathe and swim. The water is really, really clear. I've heard some high-performance swimmers say they think they can drink it. It's so clear and clean, and they don't contract their swimmer's asthma.
And
Anyway,
it's super fast.
and it's super fast.
Lots of records.
So here we are with just some more images about transparency and openness and brightness. Let's see if this works. Great. This is a view across the recreation pool to the universal change rooms, and if you see beyond the universal change rooms, you're looking right out to Athletes Way beyond the building. So it's very, very transparent. There are not a lot of aquatic centers where you can see right through them, but this was one that you can.
Okay, this is Brock Commons Tall Wood House. Actually, it's probably one of our more renowned projects. There's a big tall wood movement out there, and we were given this incredible opportunity to work on this project, which at its time of completion in 2017 at 18 stories and 53 meters in height was the tallest contemporary masswood building in the world. And this project was really all about discipline. UBC was interested in bringing together a very collaborative, integrated design team of architects, engineers, specialty consultants, building trades, construction manager, and figuring out how to get masswood construction at a price that was as close to being competitive as a comparable concrete building. And this building's very, very much along the line, same form of typical student residences built out at the university over the last decade, 18-story slab form buildings. And it was a really great testament to the team that we met that objective of doing a repeatable, economic, mass timber building. See, it was very, very incredible experience watching a building like this go up and seeing these glue lamp columns and big CLT floor panels, and using this idea of prefab construction in a very, very speedy and economic form of construction. And the way that we got the economy on this project, and I have to say is also how we got an approval to build this project, was to make the decision to encapsulate the wood in gypsum board. And there's so many architects would go and cry out about how that's just the wrong thing to do and everything. But what we've learned, because we're working on an exposed mass timber building right now, the Arbor on the Toronto waterfront for George Brown College, an academic building, but it's significantly more expensive when you have to go through all of the challenges of detailing a building with an exposed wood structure and protecting it and routing building systems through that. And there's a lot of forgiveness with gypsum board. Also, when you're relying on wood and the char for fire protection, you're really, in place of using, say, 2 layers of gypsum board, you're using 2 inches of wood, and that's it's very, very expensive. You can see the result here, though, is this is a quad unit in Brock Commons, and it's very much, actually, I was going to say it has the flavor of a student residence, but actually I'm going to say it kind of takes it up a bar here because of the spectacular views. And as we were working on the project, we were realizing it's like, yes, this is a technology that could be applied to multifamily residential projects as the code changes over time. I think there's a big announcement
Changed
today.
this week.
Yeah, it changed today. I think that they announced that. Whoops. Along the bottom there, you can kind of see this sort of a selection of a time lapse of the project. Just went up at an incredible rate of 2 floors per week, 9,000 square foot floor plates, with a prefabricated facade at the same time. The project started with a concrete base and 2 freestanding concrete cores. The authority required us to do the cores out of concrete, just as the authority required us to encapsulate the gypsum board to do the approval. This project went from start of design to start of construction in 10 months' time, which again is pretty remarkable for the first of its kind. We had to work with a prefab facade supplier to retweak and rejig their system so that it could go up at this incredible speed and be coordinated with this. I'd like to show the picture of the it's called the Collegium for the students to gather and study in. So that's the concrete base, but of course we fitted it out with wood. Why? Because wood's a fantastic material, just as we would with any comparable concrete building. And then up on the 18th floor, we took over 1 quad unit, and in its place we did a student lounge. And here you can see that we actually did expose the structure, the glulam columns, and that's because the building code actually permits you to do that without any approvals, so we didn't have to negotiate that with the authority. And this really gave the glimpse to the future of some exposed mass wood projects. The project came within 7% of the cost of a comparable concrete building, and that's really showing us that in the future down the road that really mass wood buildings, I think, are going to be comparable in cost to concrete buildings.
Project number 25, last project in the book. This is the Duke. It was one of the first Rental 100 projects in Vancouver. It's located in Mount Pleasant, and which is how we got this project. We had done the Stella project, which we showed you, and the Independent at Broadway and Kingsway, and the owner of this site was looking for an architect with familiarity with Mount Pleasant because this was going to be a rezoning. And we're actually doing a 4th project nearby, so yes, we definitely know Mount Pleasant. That's where our office is located too. The challenge of this project, and I should say that the Mount Pleasant Community Plan actually called for new building types, new building forms, and which gave us this great opportunity when we started looking at the kind of density that's needed to actually make a fully rental project financially feasible in an area where there's where the city was actually very nervous and cautious about height. When we first looked at this project, it needed to be 18 stories tall to work, and that was just a height that the city wasn't prepared to go to. So while we were sort of pondering this dilemma, this conundrum, Russell actually found some precedents in the UK of these, there were 2 buildings designed by the same architect for the same client. They were open-air atriums, and they were actually both rental projects. And they were really fascinating to us because of, and let's face it, courtyard buildings, atrium buildings, these are not new buildings, building forms for housing in the world. But it was interesting that there weren't any in Vancouver. But what we found is that we could get a lot more density on the site in a shorter building height with this approach. So the Duke has a 12-story open-air atrium that's protected with a tensile steel and Teflon canopy. And you can see it's this all-white space. We used one of Corb's color palettes that he designed, that he kind of invented with the paint company that he used to work with, for all the entrance doors. So basically that's the color feature in this space.
16? I think it was
12.
12?
12. It was, we had always known that we wanted to do something like this in the project. In the specification, we just made it really clear that we wanted 12 different door colors. We didn't have a clue what 12 different door colors we were going to choose. Let's face it, for architects, sometimes color is a real challenge. So it made it very easy to find a palette of 12 colors that were already considered by one of the greatest architects who ever lived, and we could just use them without permission.
I remember the painter hadn't read the spec that it was 12 colors, so he had a surprise when he was given the palette.
Yeah. So you can see there's continuous walkways surrounding the atrium, and at the south face, which we're looking towards, every second floor there's an amenity terrace for residents. And one of the things that this kind of space does is it really supports social interaction and a really strong sense of community. And when you talk to people who live in the building, they just absolutely love it. And being one of the first Rental 100 projects, there were purpose-built units for families. There are families who live in here. There are kids who run around on the lower deck of the atrium. There's an amazing roof deck that occupies the entire roof with dedicated play space for children and a couple more amenity rooms for residents and for families. It really is a great place. The building form, again, is a direct response to just optimizing density within this kind of forest height limitation. And by pushing all the units to the perimeter of the site, it just simply increases the number of units per floor. And the result achieves, as I said, this higher density form in fewer stories. So it's definitely something that we'd like to try again in Vancouver or see more of in Vancouver. It was very, very successful. And this is just an image looking up. This is when the sky is not the limit. Here we are. This is a list of about 120 people who have worked over the years at Acton Ostry Architects. We want to thank all the architects and designers and the interns that we've had the privilege to collaborate with. It's been an amazing experience. We hope that there's another 25 years. And it's interesting to note that we've done roughly the same number of projects over the 25 years as we've had people who've worked for us.
Just to finish up, a few acknowledgements. We've got Paul Roloff's in the crowd here somewhere. Paul was the designer of the book. Really like to thank him for bearing with us over the years. Also, Jim Taggart, just wanted to give him a shout out. He did some of the wordsmithing of the old text that had to be kind of cleaned up and tightened up a little bit after the years. Shout out to Marty Tesler back there. He did the studio shots on the previous one. Shot a lot of projects for us over the years. See, Michael's here too, another photographer. Done a lot of our work. And also just a thank you to the builders, the photographers, the writers. Everybody that's worked with us for this. It's pretty successful collaboration for the last 25 years, and looking forward to, another 25, Mark? I don't know.
At least.
Yeah.
Also want to just do a shout out to our families who have supported us through these 25 years. As Russell said, there were a few years where we were starving and it was tough, so we couldn't have done it without them.
Yep. Let's see. Special thank you to my wife, Jillian, her support of the year. First faux receptionist, I guess the only faux receptionist, and son Noah here, and my daughter Zoe off in Australia, so she couldn't be there. Yeah. Thanks, folks.
My family couldn't attend either. Also want to just say thank you very much to Nancy and Niels for hosting this event.
And all the Inform staff, and Michael, of course.
Yes.
Getting us on track. Keep us on track.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was wonderful. Really, the stories are fabulous. And stories of really working together in so many different ways. It's really inspiring. Thank you very much. I look forward to the next 25 years, seeing what you guys do. Are there any questions? Some of you are getting ready to leave, but there are availability, or if you just want to buy a book and get it signed, you can ask your question then.
Great.
Okay,
Leave it at that.
there we go.
Thank you
Awesome.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
I think there is enough.